All right, guys. So if you didn't know, Asmon's kind of changed over to being a reaction streamer. I catch some of his reactions here and there. I like the guy. He's got a lot of knowledge, and he's been in the gaming community for a long time. Like him or hate him, like his opinions or hate his opinions, he has been around for a long time. He's very curt and very to the point. So he's giving his honest thoughts on the beta. I don't know that we'll be able to use this as a reaction, but I do want to kind of watch this, and I figure if I'm going to watch it, I might as well watch it here with you guys, and we can talk about it, and we can talk about it in real time.
Diablo 4. Everybody's been playing it, everybody's been talking about it. Today, I'm going to talk about it. I've played the beta now for a few days. I've looked into the game. I've gotten 2 characters to the max level, and I've no-lifed at least one of them to where they have pretty much full legendary gear that's almost completely upgraded too.
Almost completely upgraded is really good. So if you guys didn't know, in order to go from level 3 to level 4 in the legendary gear, at least the legendary gear that I saw, cost about $250,000 gold. And I don't know how much you guys have been playing, but $250,000 gold is a lot. I've been selling and playing quite a bit. I haven't no-life the game, but I've played a lot of the game. So in getting all of your gear to at least level 3 is a really good feat for the beta. Going to level 4 is, for what it's adding, it's not very much.
So I wanted to give my thoughts on, in general, the first impressions of the game and just talk about Diablo 4. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, I used to be a huge fan of Diablo 3. I was like the guy, like I bought the game by, actually that's not true. I signed my dad up for the WoW annual pass that actually caused a problem with him changing his credit card that he got really mad at me for, and the annual pass included Diablo 3. So that's how I actually got Diablo 3. But anyway,
Fun story.
so I got Diablo 3. I played it all night long, and I got to 60. I killed Inferno Diablo. I even killed hardcore Inferno Diablo, way after Creparium, by the way. It's not as impressive as you'd think. But anyway, I did all that stuff. I got the Paragon 100. I absolutely loved Diablo 3. I had so much fun playing the game. And then Reaper of Souls came out, and I actually had a lot less fun. And so I moved away. I stopped playing Diablo 3 for a very long period of time, played a lot of Path of Exile, did a couple of other ARPGs, learned the error of my ways, went back to Path of Exile, and now I'm playing Diablo 4. So where does the game rank compared to other ARPGs? Is it as complex as Path of Exile? I think the answer to that is no.
And right, so I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and Diablo 4 seems to be set up in a way to bring a lot of people to the ARPG game style and not be as prohibitive. I myself have not played Path of Exile, but I've heard that Path of Exile is pretty much just a spreadsheet simulator. And I don't necessarily know that is a bad thing. We'll hear Asmon's take. I don't know it's a bad thing. Plus, we haven't seen the end game. The end game could be a little bit more complicated, but it's not a game's job to give content creators something to do. And it shouldn't feel like a full-time job for you to be able to play and enjoy a game either. As a gamer. Indeed, you feel Diablo 4 is easier to understand. I can see that. I feel like it feels good in a way, but we need to see it in the end game, right?
I think that is an intentional no. I don't think that it should be as complex as as Path of Exile. Diablo 4 is in general
good to see that we kind of had a similar take on that.
A much more simplified version of PoE. Like, for example, whenever you were playing a Necromancer in PoE, if you want to change from carrion golems to skeletons, you've got to completely, reorient 17 different skill gems, 3 different talent choices, your ascendancy, and then also your enchants on your gear, and then, like, your corruptions and, like, all kinds of other stuff, right? But with Diablo, there's a button that says, I thought that was a wasp, it was just one of those stupid things. And there's a button that says, like zombies or skeletons, and you just go click, and it's done. So how much longevity is that going to have? I don't know. I think that's one of my biggest concerns with Diablo 4, really, is that the game has like a surprising amount of simplicity to it. And I do understand the
I see this as a fair criticism, and I'm curious to hear his take on it. I think a lot of games have sort of kind of walked, at least big gaming companies have been walking back a lot of complexity from their games. Take games like Destiny and stuff like that. It went from like being oversimplified to being like over complicated. And then what happens is you alienate the average gamer, who is the person who is going to buy all the expand, whatever. And then you're only really leaving your hardcore gamers who are there consuming that content. And then it feels too prohibitive for a new player to join because they look at it and they go, I have to learn all these systems. Like Lamia said, I tried to play Path of Exiles and I was like, this is fucking way too much and I don't want nothing to do with it or whatever. And it makes you just walk away from it. So I think that Diablo 4 is going to have to find a fine line of what is going to be enough to keep people coming back and what's going to be not enough and make your hardcore gamers just go, okay, this is a game I play for 2 weeks at the beginning of every season, and then I put it down for 3 months. And that's going to be the line I think they're going to have to walk across or walk on. That's on purpose. What's on purpose? The very deep systems in Path of Exile versus like another, like at Path of Exile probably does very well having very deep, very complex systems. And it's probably an amazing system that they have built for themselves. But I do think that it is a bar to entry for a lot of games being too complicated. Oh, you're responding to Mucky? Gotcha. D4 reminds you a lot of Diablo 2. Yeah. And I think to Striker's point, that was what they really wanted to do. They really wanted to reevaluate the art style, and they wanted to reevaluate all the things that made people really enjoy Diablo and try to pull it back from being as cartoony and try to make it a little bit more raw and a little bit more real. And I think they succeeded in that. Rogue is like combined assassin and Amazon. I like the Rogue. I really enjoyed playing my Rogue. The only reason I really liked the Sorcerer was just because of the Chain Lightning. And if Chain Lightning gets nerfed, then I don't know that I'll enjoy the Sorcerer. Right now, I want to see how the Necro and the Druid perform. But if the game booted up tomorrow, I would probably start a Rogue. So unless like something like if the game boots up right now, I'll probably start a Rogue. Unless Necro or Druid are like really good. And that's going to be my hope, is that they are. But if not, right now it's going to be a Rogue.
The silliness in saying that to an extent, because the beta only goes up to level 25. However, I've played Diablo 3 before, many times, thousands of hours, and I don't really see a lot of complexity in that game either. I don't really see a whole lot of new systems happening in Diablo 4 that's going to be transformative to that in a way that's different for players. Like, I think that you're obviously going to have people that are, they're going to play it and theory craft it, etc. But like, how deep does that theory crafting go? And I think there's a very interesting middle ground that I'm not sure if Diablo 4 is going to be able to really capitalize on, which is the middle ground that it is complex enough for it to be fulfilling for people to overcome the complexities, but simultaneously not as complex as PoE, to the point to where it is just completely impenetrable for a new person.
So again, we kind of hit on the same thing, right? Which is, I think they're trying to find that middle line, and that middle line is going to be, can we make it just complex enough to feel good, but not so complex that you can't get your friend to join you in playing this game?
Any new person coming into Path of Exile, I tell them, follow your build guide down to a T, deviate a couple of times, realize the error of your ways, then go back to the build guide, because it's just so complex and so hard to understand. So Diablo 4, I think that really has to hit that sweet spot in between boring levels of just repetitive gameplay that's mindless and effortless with no real investment put into it. Mm-hmm. And then also not simultaneously be too complex to where people don't understand it, like PoE. And I do think that complexity is not necessarily always a good thing. There's a lot of people on...
I'll agree with that. Games being overly complex, it's not necessarily good, nor is it necessarily fun, because it makes the game tedious. And I have preached for a long time that tedious does not add to difficulty. And to me, doing things that are tedious is not inherently fun.
Line that, you know, well, the more complex game and the harder.
You had close combat rogue with penetrating shot for the runners. I just used the rapid fire, like the 3 bullets at a time. All I used was rapid fire on my rogue and poison shot and dash, and there was something else I used. Oh, my ult, right? Because those are your 4 skill. No, there was one more skill I used. That's mainly all I did. And my fucking, he did so good. Don't mind this video. I don't think it's too bad. I mean, I think, and I'll probably cut this out, but as Asmon's starting to move more away from his Asmon character and more towards being Zac, I think that you're going to start to see Asmon's, like an evolution in Asmon, because, you know, now they're running Mythic and they're doing all these things. I mean, I'm sure he's still going to be himself and be the content that everybody knew, but I think you're going to see a lot more like calm Zac and less Asmon. You like Zac much better than Asmon? Yeah, I think some people do.
Game is always the better game, not necessarily. And I want to draw a correlation, and it's an ironic correlation, but I think it's very true, between 2 old games, Diablo 2 and Gauntlet. How many of you guys played?
I fucking loved Gauntlet. I loved Gauntlet so much. I actually looked the other day to try to find Gauntlet, because it was Gauntlet 64, and I used to play. I can't find it. Like, the original Gauntlet 64, if that is on Steam, I need to know about it. I played, and it's probably not because I think it was an N64 exclusive or something, but it was the same one that was in arcades. I loved that game. Wasn't complicated. I mean, there was stuff you could pick up and whatever. I played so many hours of Gauntlet.
Played Gauntlet Legends. You played Gauntlet
Legends. I played so much of that game. Is it on Steam? Let me look. I've been looking at other ARPGs which aren't as popular. This is like one of the original. This is like one of the OGs, and you could play with like 4 people. And you could, like, it was like couch co-op, and you could only go so far away from each other. 1 to 4 play. I loved this. I loved that fucking game. I loved Gauntlet so much.
Over on the old arcade machine, you know, Red Wizard Shot the Food. That was me, by the way.
Yep, I fucking remember that.
And, you know, you just kind of did all that kind of stuff. You loved Gauntlet. You played maybe Gauntlet. You played, you know, Diablo 2. I didn't play Diablo 2. And Gauntlet was a great game. In my mind, I think that Diablo 4 should be Gauntlet, and Path of Exile can be D2. There's nothing wrong with being a simpler, easier to understand, more accessible version of a type of game. And I
mean, I feel called out, but in the best way. We played Gauntlet and DDR in the arcade on the weekends with friends. Dude, arcades, man. That was like when my wife and we were watching The Last of Us yesterday. I think it got to the arcade episode. And my wife's a little younger than me. And she was like, an arcade? I was like, dude, it looks exactly like I remember arcades looking. Like the colors, the lights. Like, I remember sitting down playing the race card games because you could actually sit down in the chair with the shifter. Like,
I really hope that's what Diablo 4 can do. And
oh, yeah, cruising America, cruising USA, cruising Europe. Oh, yeah.
I would say, like, if I had to rate the game, I think people always want me to, rate the game. Is it a 5? Is it a 7? Is it a 10? I would rate Diablo 4, the beta experience, I would rate it probably like an 8.5.
That's actually really solid. That's probably better than I would have rated it. I think my opinion of the beta is slightly jaded by like the shitty like rubber banding and stuff. But if I take all the performance, right? If I take all of the performance issues out of it, I think I probably would have landed it somewhere around a 7.5 as well. I think that's where I would have probably came in.
I don't really feel comfortable saying 9. I don't feel comfortable saying 8 either. So
I can understand his point though. You were so bored the first day. Honestly, Terea, It's all about finding a good class. Once you find that good class, the one you click with, you're like, okay, I don't want to stop playing this game.
I'm feeling somewhere around 8.5. I don't think it's incredible. It's not changing my life. It's not innovative to the point to where it completely, reorients my thinking on the ARPG genre.
Right.
However, it's very good at doing what it does. And I think that that's what I want to talk about next, is that.
And I think that's a good point. I agree. I don't think it doesn't revolutionize anything. It took systems that it already had in place. It took other systems from other games that it had in its wheelhouse, World of Warcraft, and it sort of meshed them into what hopefully will be an accessible game that a lot of people play, that still has a depth and complexity to it that keeps you coming back day after day. And people have to remember that as full-time gamers and streamers, we can do a lot in a 40-hour work week or a 60-hour work week of playing a game that a normal gamer might not get done in a month. So if it's complex enough that it takes you a month or two to get everything in place, that's not a problem. Now I'm looking up Gauntlet 2 on NES just because, man, I love that game. Dude, if it's on Steam, I'm getting it. I'm going to get it and try it and see if it's exactly what I think it was. I'm betting Friday will break the servers. You're going to log in early Saturday morning? Yeah, I'll log in before stream starts, for sure.
The actual game.
I'm also not going to start at noon because there's no reason for me to start at noon. I'll start at my normal time, which should alleviate a lot of the stress. But you can Dance revolutionize it. I see what you did there, Terrell.
Play, the combat, the questing, etc. I think the idea of having the less, Blizzard is known all the time for their cinematics, especially back in the day whenever they were just head and shoulders above everybody else. A lot of other brands have caught up nowadays, but back in the day, Blizzard cinematics were the fucking gold standard. Anyway, so a lot of the Diablo...
And the Diablo 4 cinematics did not let me down. And the fact that they used the camera and the movability of their camera to take even regular interactions down close enough to create a cinematic with just in-game engine was very, very, very smart on their part. Prime Game Time EU is like this weekend. Well, hopefully it's not too bad.
4 cinematics are not that amazing. They're not that great. But what they are is that they do show your character in the cutscene in a way that is actually pretty fucking good. And I like that. It sounds stupid, but I think I do. And that higher quality of cutscene.
And that is part of the camera, right? That's part of the camera cycling in and creating that pseudo cutscene where it's not really a cutscene, but it looks like a cutscene. But I do kind of disagree with him. I think the Lilith reveal and stuff like that, the full-blown real cutscenes, I thought they looked fucking great.
I hope they have a couple of them, of course. But it's not necessary for every single end of the act or anything like that. And I've actually really enjoyed just going through the game and seeing more cutscenes, even though they're a little bit lower quality.
Yep.
And
right, and that goes back to the pseudo cutscenes. More cutscenes, lower quality, using the panning camera and what's already there to create something that feels uniquely you because it's got your character in it, and then save the big flashy cutscenes for intros and giant moments and stuff like that. This is why I'll wait till Saturday morning, wake up at 6 a.m. and hopefully be much better. That makes sense. Lami, you're going to go as hard as you can. I think so many people are excited for the Druid and the Necro, plus everybody that didn't pre-order that was on the fence is going to be getting in. So I think it's going to be a busy time.
And I think the overall story of the game, this is, again, Act 1 story. I really like the story until you got...
It's $5. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it after stream.
Into the main town and you started doing stuff. I like the idea of being that lone grunge.
By 3 they come. Difficult to get in without massive queues though. I hope not. Honestly, I think with what they did with this previous weekend, I think the queues are going to be okay.
Adventurer that smells like fucking horse shit, well, literally in this case, and you're in this village and then they try to kill you and sacrifice you to a demon and then you kill them. And I felt like that it scaled up quite quickly in terms of the...
I agree with that. I agree with that. The story scaled really quick. It's always killed me. And my wife and I were talking about this when we were watching The Last of Us and stuff. Like any of these post-apocalyptic movies or like these weird worlds, it never makes sense how everybody's like always just like so friendly and helping you out, and like and you're just like, yeah, I'll go along with it. So like in Diablo 4, like you show up and you just like stumble into this village and like, oh, we could use some help, and you're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'll go do this dungeon. You go do the dungeon, and then you come back and they're like, yay, let's drink, and you're like, oh, this is fun and awesome, and I'm gonna be friends with these villagers. And that makes no fucking sense, right? But you go through the motions because it's a video game. And then they drug you and they try to sacrifice you. And I thought, I agree. The way that scaled out was like awesome. And it was a good way to bring you up to speed with the fact that you're going to get fucked in this world. I'm guessing it's maybe going to be difficult again without massive queues, though. We'll have to find out. I'm hopeful.
You know, the complexities of the game and the scale of the game in terms of the narrative, and I did not really prefer that as much. If I had to say, I'd say that I like the story in Act 1 Diablo 3 more than I like the story in Act 1 Diablo 4. But I think that both of them are fine. They're passable. They still fit that you know, that notch of like, it's kind of like this, it's like Pulp Fiction type stuff where it's not this super complex, very, you know, like hard to understand.
You already own Gauntlet? Interesting.
Characters. No, not really. It's just these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and they're demons, and, you know, there's like a few plot twists, but that's about it. I think that's what Diablo is supposed to be. It's not full of nuances like Game of Thrones or something, and I think that's a good thing. Anyway, so the combat. Anyway, story is good. Voice acting, incredible. Great job with voice acting.
I agree. The voice acting is all. I'm fine with the voice acting. I think the voice acting was good.
All of the kind of like, if you were to think of, think about like, you know, old Game Informer or like Nintendo Power Reviews where it says like graphics, voice acting, story, like all of those numbers, I think for Diablo would be a 10, pretty much, at least a 9. Diablo 4, absolutely. I think they're very well put together. So combat, let's talk a little bit about combat. I think combat is good. Combat is...
All right, so before he gets into it, I enjoyed the combat for the most part. Your characters do feel like they have weight. They do feel like they exist in the plane. The combat, for the most part, felt really good. Barbarian, there were a lot of times where I would be in one attack and try to switch out or try to do another attack. And maybe it didn't proc off. Maybe it was something to do with cooldowns or whatever. And those kind of moments felt bad. But overall, I thought the combat was good, right? See ya, Isa. Thank you for being here. I thought the combat was good. I thought it felt... How do I want to say this? Your characters felt much more impactful than they did in a game like Diablo 3, where it just felt like you were just proccing off skills and everything was happening around you. And it was just sort of a thing that was happening, and you were just existing in a space. You were passing through enemies. You were phasing through enemies. They might as well have not been there. Granted, we need to wait and see how that is in the end game, but in the beta, the fact that you couldn't like dash through things in the beginning threw me off. And I couldn't dash and avoid attacks. And even if I dashed, I still got hit. Because I was so used to Diablo 3 where you would just dash and phase and you would have iframes and everything else. So it made combat feel like you at least had to pay some attention. And I think that was a good thing.
Always something that Diablo 3 was great at. And I think that it was pretty decent in Diablo Immortal whenever you weren't lagging through things. So I expected combat to be good, and I was proven right. I'm very happy about the combat. I think it's fun, and it's pretty enjoyable overall. The itemization and... Actually, before we talk about itemization, let's talk about bosses. I'm going to be real. So I played a Barbarian, the first character, and I understand people tell me, oh, well, if you play another version of Barbarian, it's going to be super fun. Like, you're just playing a bad build. Yeah, maybe, but, like, bro, I'm going to keep it real. Like, it's not fun chasing mobs that are programmed to run away from you the whole time.
Yep. Barbarian was... Yeah. The only way I could make my Barbarian feel good was if I could use lunge, and I would lunge into a group, and then I would stomp to stun them, and then I would just start spinning with Whirlwind so I could just chase everything down. But the problem is everything would run away from me and Whirlwind did next to no damage. And if I wasn't doing that and I was trying to hit things with my sword, they were always just right out of fucking arm's reach. Like every time I would swing, they just weren't there. And I was like, fuck.
It's just not. Like, am I a bad barbarian? Am I a fake barbarian? Maybe I am. I played an Archon Wizard in Diablo 3, so, and after I played Sorcerer.
In you is the power to stop this.
I'm probably going to play a Sorcerer whenever the game comes out. And, you know, maybe that's just, that's a me situation, but I really didn't like how annoying a lot of the fights were as melee. And I felt like, you know, you're fighting a mob and he's standing inside of a pool that you're supposed to move out of. It's just annoying and like.
Yep. That's another one too. Like they don't move out of the poison or whatever you're supposed to stand in. So you either have to walk away and stand there and get hit while you're waiting to hit them, or you have to suck it up and go stand in the whatever you're not supposed to be able to stand in. No, it's a fair point. I played Barb my first day, and I played it most of the second day, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything that I was like, yeah. And then as soon as I switched to Rogue, I was like, oh yeah, this is so much better. And then I switched to Mage or Source, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty nutty. So I can see it for sure. Maybe that's why you like Rogue. You kept using Shadow Step, have a cooldown. You can chase shit pretty easy. Yeah, the Barbarian needs... You're going to... And I mean, like, say you want to use Taunt to make everything run at you. Okay. Well, what are you giving up to make everything come to you? Do you know what I mean? Like, because you can only have, like, so many skills. It's not like you can just... It's not like it's World of Warcraft where you can have a Taunt and you can have all these different skills hotkeyed to do things. Like, you don't have them. And that is why I think Barbarian felt bad. Is you didn't have... There were so many skills that I felt like you needed more of.
Like, I'm not...
And you didn't need that with the other classes. Like, it would have been nice to have had them, but you could do without them.
Just to play against. But, I mean, again, that could just be a me problem, I'm not sure. But as a melee player who then played ranged after that, I certainly enjoyed ranged a lot more. And at the end of the day, right or wrong, I had more fun as ranged. So anyway, combat I think was great. Bosses were really kind of hit or miss. I think that, again, this is Act 1. So, like, I'm not expecting some, you know, like, massive, insane level of complexity with bosses. Like, I'm not expecting, you know, Vaulton Gate 2. I'm not expecting Uber Elder. So, guess what? The bosses are pretty simple. They're relatively well put together, and I think that they were fine. Going and doing the side quests and the open world nature of the game, sorry about the plane, the open world nature of the game, I actually think flowed really well, and I enjoyed it a lot. The only concern that I have with the open world nature of the game is that there's a lot of like collection type stuff. For example, like you have to get a bunch of different like waypoints. Think about like the Lost Ark Adventurer's Journal if you played that game, and there's like a list of like little chores that you have to do around the world. Click all the statues, open up all the portals, do all the side quests. I will love to do that one time. But if I have to do that every fucking season, I'm going to lose my mind. And I can guarantee you that at a certain point, it will be one of the biggest reasons why I don't play a new Diablo 4 season. I don't find it to be fun to repeat the same clicking on the same statues. Or even if they randomize their locations, I still don't find it fun. It's fucking boring.
It's tedious, right? That goes back to what I was saying before. Tedious is not fun. I can see that being a real thing. And I can see that being a bar for a lot of people if they decide that, yeah, every season you have to go around and re-click all fucking 300 statues or whatever to get all of your buffs back, and it's not a one-time per account sort of thing. I could see that.
It's something you do whenever the game's new and you just want to explore the game, but after you've done that a couple of times, you've kind of, that has worn off its excitement. So I do hope that they change that and they don't make you repeat activities like that so much. And now that we're talking about seasons, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about itemization and how complex those items are going to be. So it seems like with Diablo 4, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be doing a combination of having rares that are, like 5 affix rares, and then you can put legendary powers onto them. It seems like that will probably be the meta.
Yeah. That seems like that's going to be the meta, right? Roll a really good rare and then turn it into a legendary while it has everything on it, instead of hoping that you get the legendary to drop the way you want. That's definitely going to be the meta.
Legendary power is like extremely powerful in terms of like a binary functionality. Then you would probably want to have the solid legendary, because transferring the powers, I think, makes them weaker in some cases. But anyway, the itemization I think is okay, but I don't really find it to be particularly interesting. And maybe this is just me, but a lot of the different bonuses that I got, I never really got this bonus and was like, wow, this is fucking amazing. I'm doing so much more damage. I just was like, okay, cool. Now I have this and my abilities do more damage. And I think, again, this is very much probably an issue of the beta, but
And I do agree. I think it's just because it's in the beta, like we're not getting high tier legendaries. I think hopefully we get higher tier legendaries after the game comes out. You know what I mean?
do remember back in Diablo 3, and I think a lot of you guys who have played Path of Exile or even WoW remember how good it feels to get like that fucking Omega Bis item, or like to get something that's just build defining. You go from, like being able to just be able to do it to being able to do it without even looking at the screen, or being able to not even have a chance to being able to do it easily. And I remember in Diablo 3, like I would get like a ring or a pair of gloves. I think gloves were like one of the best ones that would have like,
When D3 released, we were equipped in full rare items. It was all stats. No one had any access to legendaries. I was actually really surprised that legendaries were dropping as easily as they were, but with the positive, or with the ability to make your own legendaries in D4, it's going to be really interesting, and I want to see how it actually works out. Do you know what I mean with the aspects? But yeah, I can see that.
My main damage stat, critical strike damage, critical strike chance, and attack speed all on my fucking gloves. And it's like, oh my god, I am a god now. And I could feel my character play better. And I hope that Diablo 4 gives you that ability to do it, because I think that's one of the best things about ARPGs.
Will they bring back the runes in Diablo 4? Diablo 4, the runes are going to slot directly into your Paragon board. And then they're going to modify the stats around. They're going to modify the upgrades around that rune on the Paragon board in a radius depending on the type of rune and several other things.
Is to feel your character getting more powerful and to feel those cool things that you're able to get. And I just really hope Diablo 4 is able to capture that in the context of it being a much more simplistic game. And you're getting so many uniques as like a level 20.
I mean the same system as D2 legendaries. Choose the combo in the socket. I don't think so. The way it works, at least from what I saw, is you just take a rare and then you just put an aspect on it, and you can either go to the dungeons, and as you do dungeons, they unlock an aspect is like a legendary trait, pretty much. So you can get generic ones from doing dungeons that you can use infinitely, as long as you have the money for them. Or you can take legendary gear, destroy it, but rip the legendary aspect, or what makes it, the legendary perk off of it, and then put that back on another piece of gear. So say you had something at like level 5 that dropped, and you just got super lucky with a really good legendary skill, but the item's worthless. Well, you just keep that item, rip the skill off of it, and then add it to your better item later on in the game.
25. I don't know if this is increased for the beta or not. I worry that you're going to be playing the game, and within the first 10% of like the first day or two of playing the game, you will have obtained like 80 to 90% of the functionality of your build, and then after that you're just searching for upgrades for that build. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I could see that being kind of it's like a one and done type situation. You play the game for a few days each season and then that's it. But I can't really see myself coming back and playing future seasons if the itemization isn't a little bit more complex and I don't have a little bit more agency over controlling it.
Makes sense.
Do a few things with the items, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, especially in season 5 of Diablo 4 or season 11 of Diablo 4. I don't really see myself coming back and enjoying that same type of itemization and build control. I just feel like it would be it's very much on rails. I like playing games where
I tried all elements as a source and I wasn't too impressed. Didn't have much oomph as you did. See, for me, Hawk, I played an electric sorcerer, and I just was fucking evaporating everything that I ran into. Like all electric build with like good legendaries that like complemented the play style, and I was just evaporating everything. But I can see your point.
Where I can effectively play a character and make it so OP that it feels like I'm doing something that I shouldn't be able to. And I don't know if Diablo 4.
Oh yeah, they were broken, but I want that all meteor rain, heavy balls of fire, shattering things. Exactly, and maybe they'll have to tune some stuff. And then I do think that, with it being so early in the game and with it only being, your first 25 levels, and we were only getting access to like most people were wearing level 14 or lower gear, and stuff like that. I think it's going to get pretty strong at some point. I think it'll get pretty nutty. The bigger balls, the better. I see what you did there.
4 is going to give you enough tools to be able to do that. So that's in general the way that I feel about the itemization. It's not amazing. It's not awful, but it is what it is, I guess. So next thing is going to be, like, again, I'll talk a little bit more about the open world content and the MMO nature of the game. I heard from a number of people that Diablo 4 really felt like much more of an MMO than an ARPG. And I think that, I mean, as somebody who's an MMO player, I think this is great. I'm very happy about this. And I went through and I played Diablo 4. I interacted with other players. It was seamless. They were never annoying. They never made my experience worse. And overall, I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And I like the idea of going into town and seeing other players. And, I hate to say it, but Diablo Immortal did this too. And the truth is that it was really fun in Diablo Immortal too. So I'm really glad to see them add.
I don't, you did really like the fact that it felt more like an MMO than just like a Rift Rusher. That's the thing, and maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know that it felt like an MMO to me, but it definitely felt like a live service shared world experience. And maybe I'm splitting hairs on what an MMO is versus a live service sort of game. But I do think that it felt good. And we were talking about it earlier with Iza and stuff. Like, anytime I ran into people, I was more inclined to do world events when people were there. I didn't really have any bad experiences. We talked about how, like, the scaling worked while you were in a zone that you were at or above level and how it worked. And I think they did a really good job with it. The dungeons are instance-based, so you didn't have players coming in, like, ruining your dungeon or rushing you if you didn't want to. I think they did a good job with it. The town, yeah, it felt very organic. I really do. I think it felt organic. I did run into people. It felt like I ran into more people closer to towns. And the further you went out, it felt like I ran into less people. Now, that could be just based on the zones, right? Because, like, the main city is one zone and then all these other zones. So they might just have a limiter on the zones to where, like, if you're in a zone that has a city, maybe max players you can see is like 10. And then if you're in like a remote zone out on one of the edges, max might be set at like 1 extra player or something like that. That's only speculation, but it did feel like the further I went away from main playable zones or traversable roads, it felt like I saw less people, which would make sense. And I think that felt good. Oh yeah, probably zones and beta. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Add that same functionality into Diablo 4 and make the game feel a little bit more open and allow you to interact with other people. You can, I think, inspect them, look at their gear, which is, I think, super important in an ARPG.
I think it's super important in any game to, like, look and inspect people's gears and, like, flex and show off. I mean, as gamers, that's one thing you want to do. You want to get all the best stuff and you want to show off all your achievements and your accomplishments, even if it's to a complete fucking stranger. You just want to be like, hey, check out what I got. So giving that option is definitely a great thing, right? You can't get the good shit because you have no group to grind with? Exactly. Like, don't you wish you were me? So, that's what it is, though. I mean, like, that's what people want. That's what people want, is to show off. You like grinding? Oh, my. So, I think it was a good thing. I was worried a little bit about the open world, but I wasn't too stressed on it because I was definitely in that wait-and-see camp. And from what I've seen, it wasn't anything bad at all.
And I think overall, the open world aspects of the game, the world boss and everything, I think it's really cool.
I like the world boss. I like the world boss too.
And I like it a lot. I can see how some people that were purists of the game wouldn't have the same opinion. But for me, I think it's fucking great. So anyway, that's some of the main.
I also like Hawk, how like I played with Lamia I played with Lamia today a little bit. I liked how like it seemed like the region lock was completely gone. I can play with anybody in any region at any point in time, and it didn't fucking matter. And I think that is a great thing. How you doing, Lack, by the way?
Feelings that I have about Diablo, Diablo 4. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'd really want to go through. Obviously, you know, like a lot of intangibles, things like graphics, things like the menus, etc. I think all that stuff is fine. There's nothing really bad about it. It's good. It's definitely passable. There are a lot of people that have been negative about Diablo 4 because, you know, it doesn't make them feel the same way that Diablo 3 or Diablo 2 did. I think that in a lot of cases, that's probably a product of its time.
Yep, I agree. And this goes back to what we were saying before, like in a previous video about purists and stuff like that. I think everything's fine. I think everything's fine with it. There are a few things I would like to be able to move around and some like select alls and sell all buttons. But I think the style of the menus and stuff, I think it all looks good. I would like the map to be transparent to where I can overlay it if I want to like traverse, but the pin system works.
And I'm not necessarily sure that you can have any game that'll make you feel that way again.
And I agree. The nostalgia we all have. So as gamers and as seasoned gamers, as a lot of us are, right? So anybody that I would consider to be a seasoned gamer, somebody that's been gaming for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you've seen everything. And all of the warm feelings you had from your first time seeing it are gone. There's nothing ever going to revolutionize the gaming industry the same way again. And you're not going to get that warm feeling that you got back in the day from the first time seeing something ever again. You're chasing a high that doesn't exist. So you need to look at things without those rose-colored glasses. And I think that's what Asmon's pointing out here, is that yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's all passable. It all functions. It all works. And I agree. I agree 100%. I'm not a purist, but I think people have only played Diablo 3 very limited basis on what Diablo should be. And that goes back to some of the stuff I was saying before, and maybe we would disagree on some stuff, Johnny, but I think that only Diablo knows what Diablo should be or can be. And I think that while we might enjoy what things used to be or what things could be, only saying that, you know, well, it needs to be this because is very challenging at times. You done fucked up. You killed Kelvin. That's not good. Graphics were on point, but need more frames. Always need more frames. You perma-killed waifu. That's no good. Kelvin took some 9 to the face. You shouldn't let him eat those. Same reason I didn't go back and play childhood, but you don't want to run that point of view. Exactly, Lack, because it was a great thing at that point in time. And if you remade the game, and that's why, like, I think a lot of remakes fail. Like, I know every once in a while a remake will come out and people will be like, oh, this remake is so good or whatever. It's done in the style of the original, but they, like, added, like, better things. Well, they changed it. And there's a reason they changed it, because if they remade it exactly as it was before, it would fall on its face. They have to change and add. And sometimes things will do good and sometimes things will do bad. But you do have to make some changes over time. Completely agree. I went to the beta, just want to experience what they made, not expecting what it should be. And I think that it was a good experience, Johnny. You know what I mean? You don't like the 7 remake? Do not. I haven't played the 7 remake because I'm such a purist on Final Fantasy 7 that I'm afraid that I won't like it and it's going to make me mad. Except for Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Bloodborne, they're flawless. I'll fight anyone. The only thing that would piss you off is they took away, they haven't done so 10 of 10. There you go. I think there's plenty of room. I honestly think there's plenty of room. But yeah, I think that only Diablo knows what Diablo's supposed to be, and the game has to evolve over time. And they'll make some positive steps, and they'll make some missteps along the way, and hopefully they're open to community feedback, and trying to find where the issues are.
But if you do find one, please let me know too.
You're pretty even in suggestion, but I would not recommend the remake to anyone who played the original. New people to the franchise, it's okay. It makes sense.
Because I'd love to have that feeling again. Diablo 4.
And I agree with him. There are a lot of gaming firsts that I wish I could feel again. Like when we talked about Gauntlet earlier, So we talked about Gauntlet Legacy or Gauntlet Legends or whatever earlier in the video. I cannot explain to you the nostalgia that I get just sitting here thinking about the amount of fun I had sitting around with 4 controllers and my family and my stepbrothers, like just sitting around grinding that game on the weekend when they came over, because I got to hang out with them. We were sitting around laughing. You'd have your friends over. It was the whole moment that made it so special. And you can't ever recapture that. So the nostalgia in your brain is there, but it's there for a lot of things. So when people try to be like, look at the purest part of it, you'll never get that high again. Gauntlet was Halo before Halo. Even Halo, right? Like even like playing like Halo 3 and stuff. Halo 3 was good at its time because of what it was. But if you remade Halo 3 today, just Halo 3 and put it out there, it would fall on its face. People would be like, yeah, this is fun. And then they would just fucking move on. You know what I mean? You didn't like 7 to begin with. Remake was better, but not any more interesting to you. I can see that, Striker. If you weren't a 7 fan, then the remake was probably better, but still not anything that interested you. I'm afraid people are going to be overcritical of D4 just because it's a franchise brand. I think if it was on Zone Thing, would be an exceptional ARPG. I think so, and that's what we talked about before. I think they're going for a middle ground ARPG, not overly complicated, not overly simple. And if they nail it, they're going to nail it, and it's going to be a great game. The remake's on sale for $5. Gauntlet's remake is on sale for $5 on Steam.
Didn't really do that for me either, which is why it's not some sort of like a 10. Again, this is not Elden Ring, okay?
I didn't like Elden Ring.
Not the, greatest level of innovation in ARPGs since Path of Exile. But it's a good, solid game. It seems fun, and it seems like Diablo
Tell me in the comments why I'm a bad person for not liking Elden Ring.
Isn't really trying to compete as much with Path of Exile. They're trying to broaden the scope of what the ARPG genre is and appeal to a more casual gamer and a person that wants to be able to go into the game, understand it, and play it without using a bunch of different spreadsheets. And
well, that's what we were just talking about. PoE is one of those games where I personally haven't played it because I've heard the bar of entry is so high and that it's a spreadsheet simulator. And Asmon talked about it earlier. He was like, you start the game, you pick a build, you stick to the build, you deviate a couple times, you figure out why you're wrong, and then you redo your build and then fix it. And that doesn't sound super exciting to me. Do you know what I mean?
looking things up online, at least too much, until they get to the Paragon board, that is. So
I haven't played PoE or Elden. I tried Lost Ark, seemed boring without friends. Yeah, I think a lot of games anymore are a lot more boring without friends, unless they're 100% designed to be single player.
Overall, my feelings on the game are overwhelmingly positive. I'm very happy about it. I think that I'm reserving judgment for a lot of different things like in-game systems.
And I agree with him. I think you should definitely reserve final judgment until the game is out. And you should only look at the beta as a beta and look at the systems that were there and judge based on those systems. But friends, servers, region, that's the only big issue with MMOs is like once people start dropping off, then you're locked on servers and you have to pay for server transfers and everything else, and it can be really hard. That's why I'm really excited for D4 not being region locked anymore.
Etc. But my main concern with the end game is actually very similar to my concern with the itemization, which is why would I want to play Diablo 4 Season 6 just to go and run the
98% of players never experience the majority of PoE. You enjoy it, but it takes too much to plan your path, predetermined almost. And that was pretty much the way it was explained earlier was you pick a build, you stick to the build, you don't deviate, you just pick it and you stay there, and that's where you live. And while that seems fun, I do want to be able to change my builds on the fly. I want to be able to try different builds without having to grind 300 or 400 or 500 hours if I want to try things out. And you know what I mean? Try out different OP builds or try out different meme builds or see how far you can push a bad build. Because as a content creator, that's what you do, right? You see how, because you're trying to make content for hours. You're trying to find ways to fill in those gaps. And if filling in those gaps requires taking 3 months to grind, that's not fun.
the same dungeons again.
And most players aren't going to do it.
Again and again and again. Because Path of Exile has such a great, a great tiering of their progression content. You know, you've got maps, you've got like, I don't know, you've got the boss maps, you've got other bosses, you've got Shaper, Elder, Uber Elder, Sirius, the Conquerors, the Elder Guardians, the Shaper Guardians, like, and there's the Exarch and the Eater of Worlds, and there's all these different like benchmarks, Cortex. There's all these benchmarks that a player can put themselves up against and then try to overcome this challenge. And I'm very concerned that Diablo 4 won't have that.
And that's a very fair criticism, and something that I've wondered is, and that's what we were talking about. The good news is you're going to have dungeons, you're going to have world bosses, you're going to have different things to help break up the grind. But what are you going to benchmark across, right? Like, what are you going to look at and go, okay, I'm like, right now it's just pushing world tiers, and pushing like higher paragons and pushing deeper into like greater rifts. And that's all you're trying to do. And that can get boring for a lot of people. Like, why push GR 121 this season just to try to get 125 next season? And it sounds like Path of Exile has a lot of different things you can do and benchmark against, and different steps up, other than just the same content at a higher difficulty. So I'm curious to see how it goes, and that's why I'm part of the wait and see camp. Might try Lost Ark again because you don't want to play Diablo 3 when I'm just ready to be invested in 4. I get that. Might just play something completely different until 4 releases. Makes sense. Started playing 14 for the very first time ever. Sounds fun. Max like 4 characters this weekend, almost burn out. Have to lay off for a week or two. Diablo 3, I can see that.
And the end game won't feel as fulfilling as the Path of Exile end game.
I mean, that's what the ladders were in D2, but Max was like 99. Sounds right, which people in speedran said to get the quickest time each season. And that's what you're doing right now, right? People are like speed running 150s, and that's what people do. The hope is that there's just going to be enough content in 4 to keep people reinvested season after season.
Game does. That's my biggest actual concern with the game, is that the Diablo 3 end game, I played a few seasons in Diablo 3, even Reaper of Souls. It's fucking boring. All you do is run rifts. That's it. It's like, imagine in PoE, if the only thing that you could do is run tier... Well, you could just run infinitely tiered maps. So, like, instead of running a tier 15 or tier 16 map, you're running, like, a tier 27 map. And if you get hit once, you're dead, but you can kill everything in, like, 2 hits because you're built completely for damage. That's basically the way that Diablo 3 rifts work.
I mean, he's got a point. I haven't got that far, but that's pretty much what I've understood so far. I'd rather have them and not do the seasons and spend more time on expansions, new areas, even without new levels, just new gear, enemies, spells, and dungeons. I agree, and hopefully they do something with the seasons, and they do something with adding different maps and different ways to enjoy the content. We just have to wait and see, do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, it's a wait and see attitude is what we have to do.
I mean, not exactly, but you can see kind of what I mean. Think about, there's no other activities. There's nothing else to do. All you do is you just run rifts, and that's it. I find that to be so boring. And that's my biggest concern with Diablo 4, is that the end game will just simply be boring. It will be repetitive, not fun, not innovative. There won't be benchmark bosses. There won't be capstone challenges. And I really hope that doesn't happen, because I really want to enjoy the game. I've had a lot of fun playing the beta. I'm probably going to go play it right now. But the truth is that level 25 beta doesn't really give you a lot of insight into the end game. And with a game like Diablo, you're going to be through this type of content in like 2 or 3 days. So unless you only expect people to play the game 2 or 3 days, what do you do after that? Well, that's what really matters. So we'll just have to wait and see what that actually looks like.
And I agree. And I think that's max level 100. Max level in Diablo is going to be 100. And I agree. I fully agree with Zach on all this. There were a couple spots of disagreement, but I think he articulated some really good points. I think we extrapolated our thoughts and feelings on some of them. The big thing is, what is Diablo 4's endgame? And that's what everybody's going to be concerned with. And we have to take it at its merits on what it is. Most games don't release with a robust endgame. It takes a year or 2 before games develop all of the expansions and everything they need, right, to give you tons of different content to do. So I think expecting some giant robust end game to roll out with Diablo 4 is naive, and anybody that's expecting, and I'm not saying that Zach is, but anybody that's expecting a giant, robust 17, 18, 19, 20 different activities at multiple tiers and benchmarking and to come out day one when the game releases in June, you're naive. It's not going to happen. My hope is that probably, I mean, D3 released, in-game was completely different, so who knows exactly. My hope is that the first couple seasons of Diablo 4 are good with new content, regular updates, balance changes, and feedback coming in, because the first year's content for Diablo is done. Diablo 4's first year content is done. It's done. As soon as the game comes out, they're already working on year 2's content, right? That's the way it works. It's the way every development cycle goes. You'll have a live team that focuses on the live stuff, but all the rest of the content's being developed. So my hope is that the first couple seasons is taken care of very well, and that it lays the groundwork for a lot of large expansions to add a lot of different things to do in the future. Blizzard is introducing dungeon sigils in the in-game. Randomly generating in-game dungeons and keys works specific. What is that? Blizzard is introducing dungeon sigils. That's Mythic Plus. Oh, that's interesting. Wait, what? Oh, I thought that was Mythic Plus for WoW. Blizzard is introducing dungeon sigils for the in-game. These sigils will randomly generate an in-game dungeon, and the keys will work with specific dungeons. Keys come with affixes that add mechanics to the dungeon, and there will be more than 100 are expected to be available to players. The item drops will be dependent on difficulty. So yeah, it's literally WoW mechanics. Diablo 3 was terrible on release. There's video info too. I'll have to check that out tomorrow. That'll be a good one to watch for tomorrow. Unless the if you got a link to the video, I can watch the video if they're talking about it. That is great. I think something like that, like you literally just added Mythic Plus from WoW to Diablo, and that is what people run in WoW. Either that or raids. That's what people run. So you've at least got something to do that's on par with what World of Warcraft is currently doing. So that's my reaction to Asmon's thoughts on Diablo 4. I think he brought up a lot of really good points. He's got a lot of industry knowledge. He's been around forever. Hopefully you enjoyed everything that he had to say and everything that I had to say and my thoughts. If you either agree or disagree with anything we said, please leave it down in the comments below. And until next time, have a great day.